Gaffar from Rink Wide Vancouver in the DFO Rundown Insider Edition. New episode of that dropping later on today on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. Our Uber Eats stat of the day. There is one team in the NHL currently below the 40-point mark, and it is the Vancouver Canucks. I'll start you with just sort of a general one. Are you surprised at how hard they've bottomed out here over the last month?
I don't know if surprised is the right word. Looking at this season and in the summer going into this season, you knew this roster was flawed and they needed everything to go completely right in order to be competitive. It has not gone right at all. They've had injuries to their goaltender. They have had star players not showing up. And then in the last little while, it's been the compete level of the team being called out by the head coach and, different players in the room and this, that, and the other. So where they're at right now is probably where they should be. But it's, I still don't think this is as bad as it can get for this team. I think it can get worse, and they're already the worst team statistically in franchise history for the Vancouver Canucks, but they show no signs of even those little 1% improvements each and every game.
One of the questions I have, Irf, is you look at this team 2 seasons removed from 109 points and looking optimistic, and Pettersson's the future, and Thatcher Demko can stop the puck. Well, Demko can't stay healthy, and Pettersson has become a little bit of a conundrum here. What is the fan base thinking right now? This is one of the most difficult fan bases in all of hockey. How are they feeling about going from 109 points to where they are today?
Well, let me start with that 109-point team. There was a lot made about Kiefer Sherwood and his play and how he was such a hot topic and this, that, and the other. Kiefer Sherwood wasn't even on that team. He was on the Nashville team that the Canucks beat in the playoffs before losing to the Edmonton Oilers. So there's that aspect of it. But let me start with Thatcher Demko. Just frustrating. By the way, his new contract kicks in this summer with protection. That's a 3-year extension for Thatcher Demko. Look, I think it's being reported out there. It's been put out there. I'm wondering if surgery is needed for this guy. If there's something that needs to be done, go get it done if you're him. I mean, you have all the time in the world now to heal before training camp, so you hope you can see the best for that guy. And Elias Pettersson, I mean, the guy has come on of late. He's shown signs of being that player, but it's remarkable to see how far a player has gone since he signed his contract, really. Disappeared in the playoffs, was a non-factor last season, has had some injuries. Obviously, he's had some off the ice things that have gone on in his life as well. But just things haven't gone well for him. And that is the reason why you hear his name being talked about a little bit. Would he be willing to waive? Is there a team that be interested in taking on that 11.6 cap hit? I don't think so. I think the Canucks would have to retain on that a little bit. Not entirely sure that they want to. But the fan base itself here in Vancouver, look, I grew up here. I was born and raised in this city. Never seen a team hoist the Stanley Cup. Got close in 2011. Got close in 94. And they want Gavin McKenna. They want that top pick. They want one of those few picks, top 3 picks. And I think that they understand where you have to go to get to being at that level. And it all starts with this draft. But my question is, to you guys, even when you look at it from an outsider standpoint, you look at the veterans on this team. You talk about cores being assembled in groups. The Oilers with with Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. You look at the Leafs with Austin Matthews and William Nylander. On this Vancouver Canucks team, you get Gavin McKenna 1 overall. Who are the veterans that you are insulating him with? That's my question.
Well, and that's the thing that speaking of Edmonton, that's what got them in trouble in their decade-long rebuild is they kept going, okay, Taylor Hall, okay, all these young guys, even going back, Sam Gagner, and they just couldn't get the proper veterans, and then they stunk because the kids had to play over their head, and then it ruined development, and it was this whole cycle, and that's what Vancouver needs to be afraid of doing here. On the other side of it, it seems like there's an appetite to rip this thing down to the studs a little bit. Like Elias Pettersson, you talk about the season a couple of years ago. Yeah, he was over a point per game player. He's nothing like that right now, and his name is popping up a little bit. What do you make of Pettersson's name potentially being out there? And I guess another question, what do you think the Canucks get for this guy? Is it just offloading him for the sake of offloading him? Are they looking for a return? Like, what's their goal here?
Well, it's funny because when you talk about players on the Canuck roster, there was a time where we talked about untouchables. on this Vancouver Canuck team. And the only untouchable was Quinn Hughes. And look what happened. He said, I want out. I'm out. And right now, with the way things are going for this team, if you're Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvina, if you're even ownership and Francesco Aquilini looking at this saying, if the only way to do this is tear it down right to the bolts, then everything is on the table. Every single thing. So for Elias Pettersson, the interesting one is the cap hit. It's 11.6 for the next forever. And that's a guy where you don't really know what you're going to get. He was a point a game player, was unbelievable in his rookie year and the year after. He's a 102-point guy in this National Hockey League. But is he a number one center? Is he a center where a team is going to look at and say, okay, we're willing to give up X, Y, and Z, and then take on this contract in hopes a change of scenery can help this guy get back to that 102-point player? I'm not entirely sure how many teams are really, really interested in looking at that unless there's some salary retained. And I think that that's the important thing here that we should all remember in this. I mean, look, the Vancouver Canucks probably don't want to do that. If you're looking to offload that contract, by all means, if you're a team that's going to take it, Vancouver Canucks, you just go ahead and do that. But I think that there's definitely changes that need to be made. And hearing his name isn't surprising at all.
Yeah, but it's frustrating for me to look at this roster and go, okay, to your point, you've got 4 draft picks this summer in the first 2 rounds right now, and that's without selling anybody. That number could increase. You look at some younger players, Marco Rossi's hurt. I think Teddy Blueger helps his team if he's healthy. But even if you do this, you clean house and you start drafting, you're Utah, San Jose, and Anaheim 5 or 6 years ago. And now we're finally talking about the playoffs. Again, we said New York Rangers are going through a retool. Can the Vancouver Canucks and their fan base really, really, really go through a down to the studs rebuild? Is it something they're really ready for? This is 6 years in the future we're talking about.
Absolutely. And I think you're going to have to be, right? If you just traded the team's best defenseman ever, arguably one of the team's best players ever, because he didn't want to be here. He didn't want to be a part of what was going on. And that's on management, because management didn't give him the tools that he thought that they needed to get better and get to that point where they can be a playoff team, where they can be a cup contender, where they can be a team that people look at and are feared in the Western Conference and the Pacific Division. They just are so far away from that right now. They're a team that is scratching and clawing, like you just mentioned, to try and get to maybe 60 points this season. Like it's unbelievable the way that things have kind of gone sideways for this team. And I think that the fan base here does realize that. Like, it is going to need to get a lot worse before it gets better. Collect the draft picks. Try and get rid of these contracts. Some of these guys, Brock Besser, has won 2 goals in the last forever. You look at Jake DeBrusk, a guy that only scores on the power play this season. You look at a guy like Evander Kane, who obviously hasn't done well. And you look at a guy like Connor Garland, heart and soul guy, but he is not that guy that's going to take you into the fight every single day and win you hockey games. And that's really rounding out your top 6, aside from what you just mentioned in Marco Rossi, who's injured. And he's young, so can you really pin it on this guy? So it's Elias Pettersson. It is some of these guys with that protection. And that's why this Filip Hronek thing is interesting to me, because you look at a player like Filip Hronek, they could probably get a haul for this guy, an absolute haul. He's on a good contract. He's got some protection. He's playing some of the best hockey of his life right now. So when you look at it from the Canucks point of view, I understand that he has trade protection. He probably wants to stay in Vancouver. But if you're in the business of stripping it down and being bad and trying to get assets to improve your hockey team in 4 or 5 years, including Gavin McKenna or, Ivar Stenberg or Keaton Vierhoff, whoever it may be, I think that that's what you're going to have to do. Like there's a situation where you're going to have to get really bad and strip this thing right down before it gets better.
Last one, Irf, is if they are going to rip this down and then try to build it back up, is this management group the right group to do it? Will they be the group that gets to do it? Or how much of this failure do you think lies at their feet?
I think a lot of it does. Jeff, our co-host of Rink Wide Vancouver, had a lot of great things to say about the accountability and the lack thereof from this managing group of what's kind of gone on over the last little while. And you don't really hear any of it. And, it starts with ownership, obviously, and Francesco Aquilini. Then it goes down to Jim Rutherford. And do we trust Jim Rutherford to go and make moves to improve hockey teams or to try and strip this thing down? I mean, For a guy that's been around as long as he has, I'm in maybe the majority that says that, okay, he kind of gets a little bit of benefit of the doubt here, where he can go and make some of these moves. I mean, you look at what he got back for Gaffar Sherwood when there were an injured hockey player, where there was no chance that they were going to get a first round pick. You still got something for the guy, which those 2 picks could end up being top 50. So that's a pretty good return for a guy like Gaffar Sherwood, not to mention the prospect. But beyond that, you look at some of the moves that have been made in the past when they were playing well. Okay, Elias Lindholm, and then you look at Nikita Zadorov. Those are good moves. And then some of the other moves, okay, the contracts that were handed out and the no movement clauses, you can probably ding them on that a little bit. And then the lack of finding a second line center, a true second line center over the last little while, you look at them on that. But I think that Rutherford does stick it out. My question is, does Patrick Allvin? I think that Jim Rutherford has a lot of respect in the National Hockey League. I think that 31 other GMs, when Rutherford calls, picks up the phone really quickly. And I don't know if I can say the same about Patrick Allvin. And then just when you look at it from that aspect of it, just because of the reputation that Rutherford has. So the future of Patrick Allvin would be in question. But when things are going so bad, guys, I mean, as well as it is around the National Hockey League, if you're a team that bottoms out and as bad as Vancouver Canucks are, everything is on the table at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think a lot of things are on the table heading into the trade deadline. Gaffar from the DFO Rundown Insider Edition with Dave Pagnotta every Wednesday on the Daily Faceoff YouTube and Rinkwide Vancouver as well. Thanks for popping on. This was great.
All right, gentlemen, be well.
Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.